מחלין ומקורין ומבועין מתפשטים מנך לכל סיטרין מנך כולה הלך קיימה אלאים ותתאין אורייתא מה לגבך הילד אהבים אנט ויעלת חן גבי עלה ותתה אורייתא עלה ותתה אורייתא
Well, that was great. That was just fantastic. Hello, everyone. How's everyone going? Good? Does everybody see this cover screen with grainy photos of different Talmudic dictionaries on there? Yeah, I worked really, really hard on it. So I'm glad it turned out really well when it was blown up and I didn't test that. Perfect. Okay, how's everyone doing? Can I get some thumbs up? Either in the chat. Oh, I got a heart emoji, a celebration emoji. Wow, so amazing. A cake emoji. Wow, Olivia Devora, you updated your Zoom. Okay, everyone. Well, my name is Binya and
oh, my name's Xava. What is she pausing for?
your glorious face, Xava. And we are the co-founders of Shel Maala, the digital first queer yeshiva, and we're here to run through a really amazing quick class called Intro to Your Talmud Toolbelt to just give everyone here the tools and everyone here watching this ever, because we're recording it, the tools needed to decode unvocalized Hebrew and Aramaic Talmud with just your alphabet and these tools. And we're really excited to do that with you all over the next hour and a half, and are going to run through what the class is in a second. Anything else you want to add before we get started, Xava?
No, let's dive right in.
Okay, the one last thing I want to add is if anybody's ever looking for a Hanukkah present for me, this very femme cute tool belt thing that I found a Google image of is like, I'll let the world know that in the recording forever. Okay, cool. So, yeah, so we are going to start this class like we do every class of Torah learning with actually one quick note is that we have our two captioners, Iris and Molly, and I would love everybody to give hand claps, such twinkle fingers, and we'll be switching off about every 20 minutes between our captioners so that they have time to rest their holy digits. And besides a shout out to our captioners, the way we start out every class of Shel Maala and every class in the Svara-style teaching method that we're dedicated to is by dedicating our learning, because we know that learning is magic. It's ancestral magic. the power of learning in community. And we know that that magic creates, an effect on the world. And the power that we have in our learning is the ability to direct some of that magic to a place that we want and see and need, either for ourselves or our community who needs support, who needs gratitude, who needs healing, who needs to not have a helicopter over their head. Y'all can't hear that, can you? You can? Okay, definitely great. A little bit. Who needs anything like that? And so I would love to offer us all a moment to, in the chat on mute, put some dedications for where you want the magic and energy of your learning today to go. I'll just take a minute or two for that. Thank you all for your stunning dedications. I hope you can feel the power of the magic already starting to, glitter its way through the channels you're creating in the universe with your intentions. And feel free to continue to keep adding those into the chat as we go along. Xava.
So likewise, at the beginning of all of our Shel Maala classes and of all Svara-style learning classes, we say the traditional blessing for Torah study to seal our dedications and to bless our learning as a sacred practice. So on the screen, you'll see the Hebrew, the transliteration in my pronunciation tradition, and the English. So I'm going to read the transliteration in the English, and I'm going to say Amen at the end of the English. So feel free to either read along with me on mute or say Amen with me at the very end. Okay, here we go. Baruch atah hamakom Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav u'ziwanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, whose presence fills the world, who sanctifies us with mitzvot, inviting us to engage with words of Torah. Amen.
Fine.
Amen. Amen.
Yes.
Thank you. Music to my ears. So, to give us all clear expectations of what's going to happen over the next hour and a half, here is an outline of how class is going to go today. We'll start with blessings and dedications, which we just did. Then Binya is going to give us an intro to what is the Talmud. Then we will have a section on how do we do Chevruta and what is it. We'll have a section on finding the root, which you'll learn what that means, and on Jastro, which is one of our main tools for finding the root. And then we'll have a 10-minute break. Then we'll talk a little bit about the Frank Dictionary, which is another one of our tools. Then we will say Kaddish D'Rabbanan, which is another blessing that we use to close our learning as a sacred practice. And then we'll have some closing notes and resources and all kinds of great prizes to send you home with.
And a time for Q&A. We forgot to put that in also. Yes.
Excellent point.
Thank you, Xava. That's why they pay me the big Talmud bucks. Okay. And just to note for everybody, this class, like we said at the beginning, is being recorded for public sharing in the future. So thank you all for being here. Great. Yeah, so a little bit more about the methodology of this class. So just what to expect from the next like hour and a half or so. Most of our classes are a little more seminary and like with a lot of time for questions and back and forth with the learners that we're having. This class today is serving a specific purpose and is going to be a little more webinar format. So we're actually going to talk more from the front of the Zoom room, more than any other Shel Maala class will ever be like. But please feel free to ask questions throughout and know that there will be a break so that there won't just be like just a deluge of uninterrupted information going into your noggin, and an explicit section for more Q&A. Oh, I love that. Q&A at the end of class too. But there won't be any of the cool pedagogical techniques like breakout rooms and other participatory formats because we're doing a little more of a webinar today to give everybody the tools. Can I get some nods and thumbs up, some understandings of what's up today? Okay, love y'all in all the ways that you learn. And we're really excited to do this way today. Okay, so yay, gay. Now we're going to start our learning, yay. So what we're going to start with, what we're going to be going through today is all these things falling under the umbrella of how we learn Talmud together as a community. And this is under the umbrella of the Svara method. Svara being a queer yeshiva based in Chicago, but really everywhere across diaspora. And it's kind of like the mama yeshiva, the mama house of learning to all our little baby gay houses of learning that are popping up everywhere in their style and with their love. So that's a Svara method, and we'll be learning through that today. So we're going to start with Talmud, this word, this concept. What you see on the right is a scanned copy at much higher resolution than the title slide was, of a really classic page of Talmud. This is the first page of the Masechet Sanhedrin, of the section of Talmud it's called Sanhedrin. And what you see here is a really an example of the classic format of the Talmud with multiple different sections divided by margins and with a bunch of Hebrew and Hebrew-looking text sprinkled throughout with different fonts and a little frilly border around the first word. And I want to talk a little bit, before I talk about what is on that page, I want to talk a little bit about what is not on that page and what is really not being, what shouldn't be really taken from the Talmud. So some ways you maybe have heard about the Talmud is that it's a book of Jewish law. But here at Shel Maala and in the Svara method, we actually know that the Talmud is not really a book. And it's not really a narrative or even something with a start and a finish that you might think of as a work in the Western canon classically, where you have a page one that you start on and you can reasonably start there and you move through that book left to right usually, and reach an end page and then can say, I have finished a work of literature. That is not what you're doing. And though you'll see Talmud's printed in a book format, do not get it confused. This is not something that's going to come at you and be experienced in the way that you may experience a novel within the Western world. What you will see, and what is evidenced by kind of the framework of this page, this example page that we're looking at right here, is something more akin to an ancestral technology of how to transmute a conversation across time. And that's the way I was taught what Talmud is. when I first came to Svara, is that this is a way to transport a conversation across time. And actually, when you look at these columns on the page, what you're actually seeing is something a lot like the rings in a redwood or in a tree, or layers of archaeological excavation. Each of these sections represents a time period, a point in time, sometimes a very long point in time, sometimes multiple points in time, but a section of time in this ancestral conversation that we call as a shorthand Judaism. And each one of these sections represents a kind of fossilized understanding of this conversation, and each new section, each new margin builds out another piece in conversation with whatever texts came before it. So the central texts are in this central little column come from, are like basically an amalgamation of 1,000 years of rabbinic thought from about like, pre-0 CE to like about 700, a mixed up amalgamation of rabbinic thought that came out of our people in our multiple exiles after the Torah was created. And in something called the oral Torah. And it's a combination of things called Mishnah and Gemara. And these are terms that we'll talk about a little bit more later. And then in one margin, you'll see on to the right of that, you'll see notes from an 11th century French commentator called Rashi. And then on the left, you'll see notes from his grandsons 2 generations after that. And on the right, you'll see a bunch of like kind of hyperlinks to other places of the Talmud that were developed in 14th century Italy by this big nerd who developed a bunch of hyperlinks in the Talmud. And then you'll see notes from a North African commentator in the 1200s, etc. And this page is conversation on conversation, and it's basically margin notes taken by our ancestors, and then the best ones get turned into their own margins, which beautifully leave margins for us to add in. And it is like an ever compounding set of conversation on top of itself that both shows us where our ancestor and our tradition has been and invites us to add more. Do we see how that's not like a book? Do people kind of understand and start to see that in the actual page of Talmud? Pretty cool, right? Amazing. And yeah, feel free to keep posting in the chat. The chat is a great place to like post your thoughts and ask your questions. But yeah. Yeah, Xava, did you feel like I missed anything, or does that feel good?
No, I think you did a great job.
Thank you, Xava. I needed that public validation.
And
Okay.
I'll give it to you.
I know.
I think also this is a great time to go ahead and do a captioner switch.
That's such a great thing. So let's switch off our captioners. So let's all do the same clapping we did before for Molly's amazing job. And Iris is sitting tall and getting ready to go. Okay, here we go, Iris. Thank you so much. Okay, so now you may have seen on the previous slide, that we talked about this also as a meditative practice. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we learn this as a practice, how we involve ourselves in this ancestral conversation within the Svara method. And on the right, you're going to see an actual photo from a classical Svara Beit Midrash, which means a house of study. That is me and Xava with a lot of spray-on makeup. And some witches' hats. It's very, very cute. And the way we classically learn her within the Svara method is in this method called Chevruta. And it comes from it's a partner method of learning. And one of the sources of this method of learning is this idea that wherever there are 2 people studying Torah for the sake of heaven, studying Torah for the sake of justice in their community and a beautiful practice, The Shekhinah, or the presence, the feminine presence of God, rests among them and is dancing with them in their learning. And what we believe in this is that this is not actually an ancillary part of learning. It's not like, oh, Talmud's a beautiful thing. Whatever way you learn it, it's fine, you know, whoop-de-doo. We actually think that this relationship, this pairing with another human being and using this text as your playground and as your dance floor is the most important part of this learning. That Talmud in itself is a collaborative meditative practice that allows you to really connect with another human being in your community across the text and with the conversation. And your job in that beautiful meditative dance floor, mixed metaphor that I'm using, is your main job is to uncover and understand the root meaning, like the core understanding of each word, each letter of text on the page. And we are going to tell you how you're going to do that without knowing Hebrew and Aramaic as a language. You do not have to know Hebrew and Aramaic or be fluent in them or like have learned this before. All you need to know is your Aleph Bet. You need to be able to recognize the letters. That's it. And then with the tools we're giving you, you can step into any Svara-style Beit Midrash and do this work in Chavruta to understand what each letter on the page means. And that's the witchy cauldron that you're sitting in front of when you're in Chavruta. Let me just check the chat really quickly. Great. Amazing, amazing. Thank you for the slide shout out. Okay, so that's Chavruta. And this is another still of the cast of Pose studying Svara-style Talmud in the back. Rebbe Janet Mock is an amazing Rebbe to us all. So if Chavruta is where you learn things, inside is where you like get the understanding of each word on the page. There are a few more steps that happen after that. So if you're in a classical Beit Midrash, you sit down either in a breakout room or in a physical space with your Chavruta, whether it's on Zoom or not. And you figure out with the tools we're about to give you what each letter of the little section of Talmud you've been assigned for the day, what each letter means. Then you come back to something called shiur. Shiur means kind of like a completion, like or measurement. But in the like day-to-day parlance of a yeshiva, of the Beit Midrash, house of study, shiur, it means the whole class, when the whole class comes together. And your job when the whole class comes back together out of your little meditative dance floor with your Chavruta is to come back with your inside understanding of what each letter on the page means. But specifically, your job is not to come back with an outside understanding, meaning a actual like plain English understanding of what the text actually means. You're just supposed to know what each word means by itself, and then together as a class we take all our little tinkerings around with the words on the page that we've done in our little witchy cauldrons and take those together and try to figure out what the heck the Talmud is actually trying to say. And then once we kind of agree on what the Talmud is trying to say, or multiple possible readings, which usually happens, but it's not usually just one, multiple possible readings of what the Talmud is trying to say, we then talk about it in a gay way, meaning that we take what the Talmud's saying and either we, love what it's saying, we find this thread and it's really revolutionary. We're like, this is actually pretty fucked up. Like, I'm not sure if I like this. And we take that Talmud and let it intersect with our lived experience and add, like we said at the beginning, our own little margin notes to what our opinions and understandings are of the Talmud. And that's like basically the whole process. And then you rinse, repeat, reapply and repeat. Okay, amazing. So that is what that is. And I am going to pass it off to my even more lovely co-host to talk about the Chavruta process in a little more depth.
So, Binya just talked a lot about Chavruta very beautifully, but you may be wondering to yourself, once you get into your little cauldron, what are the actual nuts and bolts steps of the Chavruta process? And this is what this looks like. Every time you get into Chavruta, you're going to follow these 3 steps. And then when you go back into Chavruta, you're going to go back through. It's a cyclical, iterative kind of thing. So you always start with review, or what we also call chazara, which I've just put in the chat, which means basically review in Hebrew. You always start with review. So you and your chavruta start with reviewing the text you learned previously. If this is the first session of a class that you're in, maybe you won't have anything to chazer, you won't have anything to review. But you always start with what you've learned before. You look at the roots of the words, you look at the inside translation, and you look at the outside translation. Optionally, you also recite what you've memorized to each other. So in many Svara-style classes, part of the learning is that we memorize what we learn. And not just memorize in a rote way, but we memorize it by learning the words themselves so well that we can reconstruct the text in our heads based on our learning. So far, Binya and I have not included mandatory memorization into our classes, but it is a common thing you'll see in Svara world. After you've done your review, you'll go into prep. That means you're going to look at whatever text you're covering that day, and you're going to find the roots, and you're going to find out what each letter means, and we're going to talk more about the exact process of finding the roots of the words in just a second. And then finally, just like Binya said, you'll come to shiur. That's where we have people read aloud what they've prepared. We collaboratively build an outside translation together, and then we talk about it. So those are the nuts and bolts steps of Chavruta that you will be repeating very often, and you'll come to love them. Something Olivia Devora mentioned in the chat, which I love, is that it's also nice to share a check-in before diving into material. That can be a great thing to put before review as a first step. And Chavruta is often structured that way with a check-in at the beginning. Let's go forward a slide. So, defining some more terms that Binya sort of introduced us to in her section are these terms that you are going to hear a lot in the Svara world, inside and outside. So, inside is a word-for-word, letter-for-letter translation that probably won't make sense in English. Each preposition, each article, everything is translated exactly in the order it appears on the page for the given word. Each word is considered out of context. This is your main translation task in Chavruta. When you're in Chavruta, you're breaking down the component parts of a text. You just want to find out the shapes of all the puzzle pieces. And it's when we're in shiur that we're responsible for putting them together.
Good metaphor, Xava. Damn.
I'm a professional.
Wow.
So, the outside translation, this is the translation that forms these words into an intelligible English sentence, and it puts everything in context together. It's meant to capture the sense of the passage. So it might look a lot like your inside with just some extra prepositions and articles to make everything make sense. Or it might look super different. It might include slang or a parenthetical explanation. It might have emojis. It might be a piece of art, but probably it will be an English sentence that everyone in the class can co-understand. And that's what we build in Shiur together. So in your Chevruta, you focus on breaking down those parts and don't even worry about making them all into a sensible whole, because we'll do that together. If you get a chance to do it in Chavruta, thank God, that's great. But that is not your responsibility to worry about when you're in Chavruta time. And that is inside and outside. Everyone feel good about those terms right now? Can I see some thumbs upses? Great. I love it. Onward.
There's just one more thing at the bottom. One thing we like to say is that inside is counterintuitively out of context, each word, and outside is each word in context. So that's a little flip that we like to do to make sense of it.
Thank you.
Oh my God, I'm passing off to myself. Whoop, whoop. Now we're going to talk about another word that we've used a bunch, which is roots. We all have them. We all interact with them in different ways. The Talmud in Hebrew also has roots. This is pretty much we're going to learn a lot of tools, but this is the key way that somebody, like many people on this call, who isn't fluent in Hebrew and Aramaic can decode and figure out what a word of Talmud means and come up with an inside translation even without a fluency or even knowledge at all of the language. So one of the beautiful things about Hebrew is that it is a language with a very beautiful and pattern and grammar to it that can be followed and broken down. And one of the key elements of that grammar and that pattern is that each Hebrew word has a 3-letter root with some exceptions, but you can, especially if this is your first time coming into this thing, you can rest on it that Hebrew words have 3-letter roots. And at any Svara-style Beit Midrash, you're going to be handed a finding your root hint sheet, which you'll see an example of on the right side, in which we're going to go through a few examples using over the course of this next hour or so together. And this finding your root hint sheet will allow you to, will show you what common prefixes, suffixes, and infixes are in Hebrew words. And a prefix is a letter or a set of letters that come at the beginning of a word. Suffixes at the end, and infixes, a word you might not be familiar with, are letters that are inserted into the middle of words, in between root letters. And this sheet will show you all those common ones so that you can kind of, you remember in National Treasure when they like rub that lemon on the Declaration of Independence and all the things light up gold, and then they're like, oh my God, we have to go to like Philadelphia to go find a brick or something. I forget the exact thing. Great Talmudic film. And this kind of allows the letters to light up in gold for you. So you know which ones are core letters of a root and which ones are the prefixes and suffixes that were added onto it to turn it into a root, into an actual word in context. So this sheet will tell you the prefixes, suffixes, and infixes, also show you letters that almost never or never drop out, and letters that do. So like letters you see, like if you see them, you're like, oh, that's definitely part of the root. And letters you see that like, that might be part of the root, that might be a prefix. And you're gonna develop the skills to be able to differentiate between them. And once you use that secret decoder ring / National Treasure lemon slice, you're going to get to 3 letters at the end of that process. And those 3 letters are going to form the root, which is the core meaning of whatever word you were looking at. And once you have the core meaning, you are going to look up once you have the root that signifies a word's core meaning, you're going to look up that 3-letter root in a dictionary called Jastrow. And this Jastrow dictionary is being shown stunningly by the lovely Olivia Devora, who I'm now spotlighting for everybody. Work it out. Work it out, Olivia. Woo! Woo! Wow. And gentle. Yay. We love that here. Okay. This Jastrow dictionary is a comprehensive dictionary that this nerd produced like 100 years ago, which has every single root in every rabbinic text you're going to see, because he spent 25 years doing it. And it was published after he died, right? He did it literally till he died. Truly amazing gift to the whole world. Okay. And he did not know he would have a queer fangirl club in 100 years, but here we are, and I'm sure he's loving it up in heaven in Shel Maala. Great. So we have this sheet, we have words, and
Once Binya, we might mention this again later, but I just wanted to let everyone know in the chat, I've put a link to the digital version of Jastrow that you'll be seeing in this class. And it's also available for free on Safaria. And
not the book, but...
Not the book, but the digital version.
Yeah.
Is available for free on Safaria. So just know that those links are in the chat, and I'll share them again at the end of class.
Right, exactly. So you have the digital version for free. You can get the physical version if you want to Vogue with it or something, or turn pages. Great. So I'm going to show you an example word. This is an actual word in the Talmud that you may come across, and that we actually studied in our last Shel Maala section. All you have to know when you see this word is being able to tell, oh, that's a gimel, that's a zayin, that's a yud, that's a lamed, that's a vav, that's a taf. And you don't even have to be able to tell it. Sorry, that's the same. You don't have to be able to tell it that fast, because you can look at a reference sheet of the Hebrew letters, but that's all you need to know. And now I'm going to show you how you're going to find the root of this word when you come across it, or words like it in the Talmud. So as we know, our first step is to look at, or as we know from the thing, if we look at the second bullet point, there's a key here to remove them in that order, it says. So we look at prefixes, then suffixes, then infixes. And the moment we hit 3 letters, we try and look that up in the Jastrow dictionary. So what we're going to look for first is to see if this Gimel, Zayin, Yud, Lamed, Vav, Taf has any prefixes in our finding the root hint sheet. And then if not, any suffixes. And then if we still need to get rid of letters to get to 3, the magic number, any infixes. Does that make sense? That kind of process? Great. So let's go for it. So we're going to pretend like we're actually looking at the hint sheet, blah, blah, blah. So if you look at the hint sheet, you'll see that there is an entry in the prefix section for, and Xava, did you send a link to the hint sheet over or no?
I have not, but I will.
Okay. So if you look in the hint sheet, there's going to be an entry for a bet, an entry for a daled. Gimel comes in between bet and daled. So you know that there's no actual prefix in the prefix section of our sheet. So gimel is not a prefix, so we go on to suffixes. Suffixes, wow, there is one in the section of the hint sheet that you would be seeing. And before I go on, let me switch out the captioners, and please twinkle finger it up for Iris. And Molly is on her way. Thank you, Tsippy. So great to have you here too. So there is a suffix. The vav taf is a classic suffix. And now we see on the right that the vav taf has changed colors, basically, that we know that that is a possible suffix on this word and something we can cut out if we're looking for the root meaning. And then we still have 4 letters. So we need 1 more to get to 3. Right, math kids? That's right. So we look in our infix section and we see that there's a possible infix of a yud in the middle of a word. So these kind of hyphens represent root letters. So it's saying like there might be 2 letters before a yud and then a 3rd letter afterwards, which is exactly what we see in this case, like gimel zayin before a yud and then a lamed afterwards. So we can cut that out. Now the other yud has changed colors because of the lemon wedge, and we have 3 letters left, and that sends our happy merry band of gays on our way to the Talmud. Wow. Oh, to the Jastro. Yay. And now Xava is going to take us through that.
Great. So we have this wonderful digital version of the Jastro, which is very authentic to how you would go about looking up a word in the Jastro in real life. And you can see on the left here, we have first a list of letters in the Hebrew alphabet. And we're currently on the entry for Gimel. And you can see a list of words that start with Gimel in our next column. And those words are the words that appear at the top of pages. So if you look at this image of a page, on the top, you'll see 2 words. And so this list of words represents the words at the tops of pages. So when you go looking for your root, which we just discovered is Gimel, Zayin, Lamed, then we'll go looking for the word that would come before that in Hebrew alphabet order. And that's where you want to start looking. So in our slide, we have a little circle around where we would go look. So we see an entry for Gimel Zayin Yud, and then the word after it is Gimel Zayin Lamed. So we want to get to the start of the Gimel Zayin Lameds, so we go a little bit before them to find this page that we're on right now. We look on this page to see if we can find our root anywhere, and we see it over here in the bottom right.
I feel like I'm on Dora, and all the little kids are like, it's there. Okay. Wow.
So we see this root of Gimel Zayin Lamed, Gazal, to tear away, to rob, to take illegitimately. And so we have officially found our root in our Jastro and completed that portion of our Chevrita. And then at this point, we would just add the suffixes and prefixes back in, plural noun, masculine, singular, present tense, in order to make it be whatever specific flavor of that root it's being in this moment. Swipe or no swiping.
Oh, man.
One might say. So over here we see our root, gazal, to rob, and then the infixes and suffixes turn it into robbings, which in context makes sense, but we're doing an inside translation, so it's a nonsense word. It's a great example of that principle. So I think next we'll talk a little bit about this thing called the hint sheet. So when we teach, or when our esteemed guest teachers teach a Svara-style class at Shel Maala, they create this awesome thing called a hint sheet. Sometimes there are words in your text that are just going to be really confusing and hard and illogical to find roots for. And sometimes they're loan words from other languages, so they don't have roots. And the hint sheet is this tool that will help you find those hard to find words. So if you look at a word and it's not obvious to you how to find the root, especially if you're a new learner, this is the first place you're going to go. And it's going to give you some great hints like this. Last letter is a suffix. Proper name. Look up as is. All these kinds of things are going to help you in those early stepping stone stages. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the format of slides that we use in Shel Maala classes for the most part. Our slides are usually laid out like this. At the top of the slide, we have the title of whatever we're studying. And then right under that, we have the unvocalized Hebrew and or Aramaic text, which is what you and your Hevruta will have picked apart before shiur. Under that, in italics, you will see the transliteration, which will be the pronunciation written out in English characters. Under that, in underline, you'll see the inside translation, which will be what you and your Hevruta will make together. And then under that, in plain text, you will see the outside translation, which is what we're building together as a class. That's sort of your visual guide to Shel Maala slides. And these things will all be labeled in class, but it's good to go in knowing what you're going to be seeing.
Great. So now that we've done that, I would love to take our dive into, take off our the floaty things that kids have on their arms and take a real swim into the sea of the Talmud. Okay, so we're going to do this method, and I would love for y'all, even though we're not doing a lot of like participatory stuff, I welcome you in a notebook on what you're doing on your side of the Zoom screen, or to put thoughts and stuff into the chat as we go along. We're going to actually apply this method to what are the first 3 words on that page that we showed you originally when we were talking about what is Talmud. We're going to take those first 3 words of real Talmud content and actually apply this method to them to see how they work. So one of the things to note is that I'm going to be, like we said over here, there are, you'll have a hint sheet if there are multiple possible pathways for finding the roots to something. And we're going to learn these 3 words as if we had that hint sheet there. So I'm going to if there are multiple pathways, I'm going to take the right one for the first path that we're going to go down rather than try multiple wrong ones, for example. And that's going to be what the experience is going to be, especially for new learners who are going to get hints on where to go look. And I also encourage you to look back in the chat and to have the hint sheet open, the Finding Your Root hint sheet open while you go along with this, because that'll help you see the entries that are available. Okay, so we're going to go through this first word that came kind of like the, just in that big flowery border, the first word of the Masechet of Sanhedrin, subsection of the Talmud called Sanhedrin. And these letters are Daled, Yud, Nun, Yud. Everybody see that up there? And have those Hebrew letters? Great. Cool. So Daled, Yud, Nun, Yud. Now, what we're going to look at is, let's imagine there was a hint sheet. So like Daled is a prefix sometimes, but for this word, it's not. And in a hint sheet, it would tell you Daled's not a prefix in this word. So since it's not a prefix, what I would then go do is check the suffixes. And in the suffix section of our Finding the Root hint sheet, our little decoder ring, you're going to see there's a bunch of options for what Yud could be. And one of these options is going to be relevant to our word, and we're going to see what it's like. But this, we know that at least we know that Yud is a possible suffix on this word, right? So we found that. And then after we cut out the Yud and turn it a different color, we only have how many letters left? Hold it up. 3. Woo! Amazing. They should have Dora teach Talmud. It's like so basically the same. Okay. So we have 3 letters, which means where do we go? Jastro. Amazing. So I just circled the one that eventually we're going to land on as the correct translation for this letter of Talmud, this suffix on this word. which is this a masculine plural noun in construct state. And if you don't know what that means, let it, as our teacher says, rise up and pass away. We'll talk a little bit more about what a word like construct state means later. So we have these 3 letters, and we're going to look in our online Jastro. And we're going to find that there is, we're going to look in the Dalet section on the far left, and then in the subsection of the Dalet section, we're going to see, and there's a Dalet Yud Lamed and a Dalet Yud Nun. And we're going to know across those 2 pages is going to be the root that we're looking for. And this is on the second page, the Dalet Yud Nun page. And we see many, many, many different translations of this. So what you're going to see sometimes is a translation of a root as a noun and as a verb. That's 2 common ways that you'll see, like, and you would see that for a 3-letter word in English, run, right? Like, I'm going for a run, or I'm running right now. And that same thing where a word can be used as a noun or as a verb and have slightly different understandings is going to be also applicable in Hebrew. So the actual definition that we would land on together as a class in Shior, if this were a real class, is the one that's right here. And when you go into Jastro, you can, and take notes with your Chavruta, you can take down, oh, this is what the noun means, this is what the verb means. And then once we get to Shior, we're going to figure out, is this a noun, is this a verb, put it in context, and actually, like, figure that out. So what we're going to land on here is see that it is a noun that means lawsuit or claim or judgment. And that's the core meaning of this 3-letter root. And then, so if we add back on the suffix, it is a masculine plural noun. So plural noun, so from judgment to judgments. And we're going to put it in construct state, which I'm going to say once. And if you don't understand, that's totally fine. Not important to this class, but a construct state is basically where a noun gets of added to it. So, it's not just Game Thrones, it's Game of Thrones. That's game in construct state. So this is Dean in construct state. So judgments of. So judgments of heaven, whatever we're going to see in a second. And I'll let Xava answer some of the questions in the chat. So now we're going to look at this second word that we got, mem mem vav nun vav taf. We're going to see that there's a suffix here that's common, vav taf. And our hint sheet in this context would also tell us, skip looking at the prefix. There's a mem prefix, but what's really going to be good for you is the vav taf suffix in this context. And this is also one example. So Jastro has 3-letter roots for every word. Some words, like Xava said, are loan words. And this is a loan word from Greek. And you're going to see some Greek words in the Talmud sometimes, and we're going to help you with hint sheets figure this out. But in this context, you actually need the 4 letters to look that up. But if there's ever an exception like this, you're gonna have it in the hint sheet, and you can trust in the method for the vast majority of words. And when there's an exception, we'll lead you so that you're not lost in the ocean. Does that feel good to people? And that's going to be true of any Svara-style method. So in this context, mem mem vav nun is going to be what we look up, and it's going to be a noun. And most time, if you're looking up more than 3 letters, what you're looking up is a noun. And we're going to go to the subsection on the left, just like we're used to. We see mem lamed and then mem mem. And our root starts mem mem. So we know it starts somewhere in between those 2 pages, just like you would look up, any word in an English dictionary. And we see, pointed out, kids, where is it on the screen? Dora. Oh, it's in the top right. Yay, good job. Thanks, Olivia Devora, for pointing. And we see the definitions here. So the definition we're going to end up going through is accumulation. So we have accumulation, and then what we had before was a suffix, a plural suffix. So accumulations. Amazing. Oh, Devora the Explorer. That's really good. Oh my God. Love you, Olivia. Okay. So
Copyright.
yeah, copyright. We believe in intellectual property here at Shel Maala. Okay, so that's our second word of Talmud. Y'all are fucking coasting through. I'm seeing a lot of nods and understandings. It's okay if this is a little much. We're going to keep going through this method and just know that there's the tools here and the teachers in any Svara-style Beit Midrash to guide you through this. And y'all are doing amazing. Thank you so much for being here. So this is our second word. And now we're going to go through our third word of Talmud. Great. So if you look on this word, this is a word that's going to really that can really kind of follow the method. So the bet at the beginning, you're going to find in the hint sheet, if you want to search on the hint sheet that you have the link to. It's going to mean either in or with. And then the hey is another possible suffix that your common thing, it's a common, it can mean her or hers. It can just be the end of a feminine noun. Like it's kind of like the a ending in English that often indicates a feminine word. So we look at those, we turn them gray with our lemon. Amazing. And now we have 3 letters, Shin, Lamed, Shin. And we're going to head over to our boy, Jastrov. He was Polish, so you can say Jastrov if you want to be cutesy about it. And we're going to look at it with these 3 letters. This is actually going to show you really quickly one of the common ways that Jastro is going to treat you like a national treasure hunt. So if you look up this letter, Shin, Lamed, Shin, in the Jastrow dictionary, this is the entry you're going to see. And it's going to have little v, and then shalosh, and then Shin, Lamed, Shin, He as an option. The little v is the 4th language you're going to be introduced to today. So we've had English, Hebrew, and Aramaic so far, and now you're going to have Latin. Yay. So V stands for vide. Oh yeah, we've also had Greek, 5th language. Y'all are polyglots already. Poly in every way. That's what we love here in Shel Maala. Okay, so so the V stands for vide in Latin, which means go look. So it's just as if this entry says look here. So anytime you see a V in Jastrow means just go to this entry where I have a fuller definition. And then we go to that entry, which we see is somewhere between Shin Lamed Shin and Shin Lamed Shin Lamed. And Dora the Explorer pointed out on the left side. Amazing. And you see that it's Shin Lamed Shin He with an option of which one's masculine, which one's feminine. We can go more into Jastrow entries later. Like these entries can be a little overwhelming. Just always, the only thing you have to know as a new learner is the first entry that's italicized. That's where the actual definition among all the parentheses and the whatever. If you look for the first italicized word in an entry, you'll see 3. So 3 is the root of the Shin Lamed Shin that we've seen. And then if you were in Hebrew school, you might know this, shalosh, that's this actual root. So we found that root on a little treasure hunt with Jastrow. And shosha means with 3 in the just with the feminine marker ending. Okay, does that make sense to people? Okay, and that's 3, which is our third word of Talmud. So amazing that we set it up that way. So cool. The third word of the Masechet of Sanhedrin is 3. So checkmate, atheists. And now we're going to show what a typical slide would look like. So we take our insides and we say judgments of accumulations in or with 3. And then together in shiur, we would form that into an outside sentence. And as you can see, the transition between the outside sentence takes into account multiple things. It puts it in a word order that makes sense in English. It also would add information from your teachers like us, who would know that when we're talking about three in this context, it means three judges. And that's not information you would have on your own in Chavruta. It would be the kind of information that would be added in Shior altogether. But this is just an example of the type of difference that'll happen when you leave Chavruta and then when you spend some time in class together, going through all your Chavruta translations. Yeah, so Chavale, I see that we're a little beyond time. I feel like we can probably just skip these three words. I'm not sure how you're feeling.
Yes, I think that is a great idea. So what we were going to do here is go through another three words from the same Mishnah and go over that method one more time. I'm wanting to preserve our break time. So I think we're going to skip over this section where we repeat that process again and go to what I think is break after that, right?
Yeah. Well, neither of us know because
Let's
the
go forward
slides decide. So yeah. So in the future, if you're watching this, you can hit pause now and go do this on your own. And we're gonna all just click through the slides slow enough. So in the future, if you want to do this, you can just pause at each slide and see what's up. But we're not gonna actually go through this because it's basically the exact same thing that we just did, just with three more words. So no real new information. Okay. Elevator music. Do, 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Yay, bye 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 yay bye boy. I love that nigun. Okay. Amazing. You learned that so much faster than you did last time. Okay. Great. So amazing job. Everybody just go take, do you want to do 7 minutes or 10 minutes for this?
Let's do 7.
Okay, we're gonna do a 7-minute break right now. That means like turn off your video, enjoy your time. We'll meet back here at 6:12, 12 after the hour. And see y'all soon. Amazing job. Thank you, everybody. And I'm gonna pause recording.
آدم وبهيمة بس روح ونشمة قد بعكسن فكرما دم وتسلم وركما هاد ليفل دما فني مشاركة بهيمة ندمة زي دار وكوما حدوش بني أدما تيات عدسن الشما يا كافين وكما كرامين والشكما للتبال مسوي.
Hello and welcome back, everybody. To get the full track, you'll have to sign up for Shel Maala Premium, or stay till the end of the class.
I think it's also caption or switch time.
It's caption or switch time. Amazing.
We celebrate switches in this class.
Oh, switches and polys. Everybody in the Bay Area, I give out. Okay. So here you go, Iris. Yay, thank you so much. Beautiful. So we're back like we never left. Can everybody see the break screen still? Okay. So enjoyed that 7 minutes. Yeah, gonna get some head nods, shoulder shimmies, whatever's going on. Amazing. Oh, that is right, y'all. I can see some good neck motions in the vid section. Okay. So Chavale, take it the fuck away.
So before our break, we learned all of these words of Talmud, um, which were the beginning words of the text of our previous class, which was called Talmud for Boring Bitches. In Hebrew, they're read as Dinei Mamanot Bishlosha, Gazelot Bachavalot Bishlosha. And these are the first words of our Mishnah, which is the earliest layer of Talmudic text, and oftentimes sort of the basis of what Talmud is talking about. We have our inside translation here in underline, and we have our outside translation in plain text, just like you would see them in a normal class. So that's what we did before the break, and now we trudge ever onwards. And I'll pass it back to Binya.
No. Xava, go for it.
So now we're going to talk about some Gemara. So Gemara is a word that you'll hear often. Sometimes it's used synonymously with the word Talmud, especially oftentimes in Orthodox contexts. When you hear someone talk about Talmud, they're often talking about Gemara. Gemara is the next layer of text, which comes chronologically after the Mishnah. And at its core, it is a commentary and explanation and discussion and conversation with Mishnah, that previous chronological layer. And also, it's so much more and full of nonsense and glitter and magic and all kinds of things we have yet to discover. So, we'll have a little Gemara here. Oh, I didn't realize there was all this on the slide. So we travel 200 years in the future from our first text, which was the Mishnah, to the Gemara. The Gemara includes another set of rabbis who are going to comment on the words that we studied earlier. They're a little further down the page going to comment on those words. And the text of the Gemara looks like this. And you'll see down at the bottom, those Hebrew characters are the beginning of the Gemara quoting our Mishnah from before. So this is sort of like an introduction to the commentary that the Gemara is going to be giving on our Mishnah. So we're not going to dive into this entire text like we did before, because we can find the root in the standard fashion on these words. Two of them are already down to 3 letters, so you would just look those right up. And the second word is very standard. You do it in the exact method we discovered before, where you look it up in the Jestro and you break it down with your hint sheet and yada yada, all that great stuff. But you might look at that last word and think, why is there a weird little apostrophe at the end of it? That's not a letter. That's not anything in Hebrew, seemingly. How will I possibly find the definition of this word? You said all I needed to know is my aleph bet, and this is not in the aleph bet, you might say to yourself, as I once did at my first Talmud class. And that is going to introduce us to our next dictionary, which is called the Frank. And also, this little symbol is called a chupchik, which is a very cute name. And anytime you see one of these funny little apostrophes, it is a signal for you to go and look in this next dictionary, which is called the Frank. I'm going to grab my copy off my desk right here. It has this beautiful, very gay cover with a rainbow olive. And it's called the Practical Talmud Dictionary by Yitzhak Frank. And it is a very special friend to help us with these weird little words and weird little symbols that we don't know what they mean. Because sometimes our method for finding the root just isn't enough. And that's when we turn to this guy. So I'll tell you a little more about what's in Frank. Frank is a Talmud phrase book. So a phrase book is a tool you might often bring when you're visiting another country that contains really useful phrases like, where is the bathroom? I'm lost. Things like that. So
Where is the nearest gay yeshiva? Yeah.
Exactly. It's here. So Frank is like that. It's not full of all of the roots that you're going to find in the Talmud. It's not going to have every single word that you see on the page. It is useful for finding colloquial understandings of the yeshivish words found in the Talmud. So yeshivish is the dialect spoken in yeshivas, both then in Talmud times and now. We use all kinds of funny words that aren't proper Hebrew that you would be hard pressed to find in any dictionary. When you use Frank, you're mostly going to be looking up things as is. Sometimes you'll need to remove a prefix. When you're looking at an Aramaic term in Frank, he will provide a Hebrew translation for it, which can be very useful because Aramaic can be very confusing and different from what you're used to. And after you find what you found in Frank, it's still very useful to go back to Jastro, now that you know what all those weird little words mean, and find the Jastro pieces that you can. So for instance, here on our page that we have displayed, in the lower, oh no, it starts in the sort of top left-hand side, we have it circled or squared. We have our entry for this word with its little chupchik. The word is v'chule, which means sort of etc. And you'll often see it after a quote in Talmud to sort of say, you know what comes after this. It's the rest of our Mishnah. So this is a great use case for Frank because you would have had a very hard time finding the meaning of this word in Jastro. And in fact, Frank, at the back of Frank, has a whole table just of chupchik terms, where when you see a chupchik, you can just go there and look up what that particular, sometimes it's an abbreviation, sometimes it's an acronym. Either way, you can find it in the back of Frank. And that's the power of Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
That's what we say every time. Okay. Great. Go for it, Xava.
So this is just a moment to celebrate everything that you've learned in this class. Both you here, now wonderful students here with us on this evening.
1 second. Are other people hearing a little audio distortion with Xava? Okay. Let me, Xava, why don't I take this? Or can you try talking again? I don't know. Let me take this if there's a little bit.
Go ahead.
Okay, great. So with my slightly clearer headphones, but Xava's gorgeous teachings in tow. So this is a moment to celebrate, as Xava said. And just over the last little hour and a half with a 10-minute break included, the things you've learned are what Talmud is, how we learn her, what is that learning process in detail called chavruta, how to find the root when you're actually working in that chavruta with a pair, what inside and outside mean when you're talking about different types of translations and understandings of Talmudic text, how to use the two dictionaries that you're most often going to use, meaning the Jastro, which is a whole which is a whole comprehensive set of every root that's ever been said by a rabbi in the text of things by that beautiful nerd, Zichrono Livracha, and Frank, which is our little guidebook of useful phrases when you're visiting the country called Talmud, the borderless diasporic non-nation state of Talmud. And you learn basically like, a handful, 4 words, depending on how many times you paused on this recording and actually went through the stuff, 4 to 8 words of Talmud, and some technical terms and amazing stuff. So you're awesome. Give yourself a hand, either physically or with your emojis or with just, give yourself a little hug and rub your shoulders. It feels so good. Okay, you're an amazing Talmud learner now. You've made all your ancestors and transcestors so proud. So now we're going to take like about 4 minutes or so to just have a little bit of Q&A and a little bit of Q&A. And then we're going to bless out our learning and talk about upcoming learning opportunities, and also offer everybody here now and in the future a request or an offering to donate, just so we can cover the costs of the captioners' work and our own labor in this creation, and future needs of Shel Maala. So thank you all so much for that. Is it a captioner switch time for this last little bit too? Or yeah, we're like 5 minutes over. No? Yeah, it is. No? No, it's not.
No.
Great. I'm glad that was recorded. Okay, so Q&A. Give me your questions. Give us your questions. Anybody have any?
I have a question not about what we just learned, but just about like Shel Maala.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious, like, is there a Facebook page, or how should we connect with you?
Wow, like we literally paid you. I'll just take these cuts of audio quality, I guess, Xava.
Sure.
But yeah, we have a Facebook page and we're going to link everything at the end. Xava, you can give some links now if you want. One of the main ways we interact is on this little thing that all the weirdos are doing these days called Discord. It has multiple different channels and ways to talk, little message board, and we're very active there with a bunch of different things. Yeah. Any other
Thanks.
questions that we totally didn't plant in the audience? Do you have a preferred online source for non-translated Talmud? We do. That's such a good thing. So the 2 things we love are Sefaria, and Sefaria gives you an option to show vowels or no vowels on your Hebrew, and to show translations into English or no. And so if you turn off the translations and you turn off the vowels, it's not in the same shape as Talmud usually, but it's very easy, very useful. And basically you can learn from it in the Svara method. You don't want to turn on translations and you don't want to turn on vowels, because then you're going to lose all the beautiful meditative parts of this practice. Because the point of this practice is not to gain information about what the Talmud is saying. It is not that. It is to put yourself into ancestral conversation and into one-on-one relationship with the Chavruta, and into multiple relationships with your learning community and shiur. And too many translations, somebody else's voice, usually a cis dude who tells you what the Talmud mean, is not what you need to really dive into the Talmud in this way of Svara. The other way is Merkava, which Xava will also link you, which basically has the same options for vowels or no vowels, and translations or no translations. The interface is slightly different, but it'll show you the Talmud page with the 2 main commentaries on it in the shape of the Talmud. So those are 2 ways, and Xava just linked them. So great question, Davi. Yeah, and we have time for like a half more question. Did we learn Talmud equals Mishnah plus Gemara? Yes, true. So everything in the Talmud is either Mishnah or Gemara? Yes, true. And is one or the other the certain inside outside parts of the Talmud pages? And the other margins on the Talmud page are commentators like Rashi and the Tosafot and words that you might not know yet, but you will learn if you come to a Shel Maala or Svara Beit Midrash. And you'll be able to tell the difference between Mishnah and Gemara. Ask your teachers in whatever class you take, they'll be able to tell you. But they're little pre-headers that you can see before each section, and that's how it's broken up between. But amazing job.
Okay, let's wrap this baby up.
And sorry, when Xava says innermost part, she means like not the innermost margin, like the central column. Okay, great. So now we're going to wrap it up with a Kaddish D'Rabbanan, which you are welcome to say on mute or to say Amen at the end of it. And this is just our little blessing sandwich, the other piece of toast to bless up the beautiful learning and intentions that we've done today. So please say it with me on mute or say Amen on the end. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mivarach Leolam Ulalmei Almayum. Let the great name be blessed from now until all eternity. And we say, Amen.
Amen.
So,
Okay, so am I okay sounding now or
let me
still?
just tell you, you are clear as the rivers of Babylon. Go for it.
Upcoming, our next class is called A Nightmare on Helm Street, a Talmudic ritual for bad dreams. There is only 1 day left to sign up. We will be closing registration tomorrow at noon. So Livia Devora just put the Facebook event in the chat. I am dropping in the chat now a link directly to the Google form. So if you want to go take this class, it's going to be 5 sessions. Olivia Devora is teaching. They're our first guest teacher, and it is going to be incredible. I cannot wait. Binya and I will be there ferrying the class as well. So if you want to learn some Talmud, if you're full of Talmud fire from this class, go register for that before noon tomorrow. You can stay in touch with and join the Shel Maala community through 2 main ways, through our Discord and our Facebook group. I have put them both in there for now. Go in the Discord, introduce yourself, go on the Facebook group. The Facebook group has been a little less active recently, but we do put lots of updates there. So those are the 2 ways to stay in Shel Maala community, and we use them both a lot. If you here now presently or in the future want to donate to help cover the cost of this class, especially to compensate our incredible captioners, Molly and Iris, you can use either Venmo at bcoats or PayPal bcoats@gmail.com.
Yeah, and any donation from 0, 18, not 0, that wouldn't be a donation, but $1, $18, anything like that would be so deeply appreciated. And we would love if you would take a second after this class so that instead of paying out of our own pockets, which we're happy to do, to our lovely captioners, we could use community support to make sure that our learning is accessible. So thank you so much for coming. And even if you can't donate, just your presence is a stunning gift to us. And thank you so much for learning with us.
And finally, we are always available by email. We love to hear from you and answer your questions and problems. You can reach me at javadecordova@gmail.com and Binya at bcoats@gmail.com. So come to our nightmare class, join our community, donate to help support this class, or email us if you have any questions. Okay, we love you, each and every one of you, individually and particularly. And now this class is over, and we're going to outro with some music. but feel free to take off or to hang around and dance with us for like 4 more minutes.
Wow, amazing. Let me just grab this 1 second. New share with sound. Great job. And in Hasidic tradition, you start saying Shabbat Shalom on Wednesday, and today is a Wednesday, so Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Oh, my fade out from before, which was so perfect, made my start right now not so good. Okay, all great.
ألف بيت جمل دلت هي فاف زين حي تيت يود كف لمد ميم نون سمخ عين بي تبدي كوف راشين تاف ألف تاف تاف ألف تاف أبقى دفز حتى كلام الناس بتسكر الشداء أبقى دفز حتى كلام الناس بتسكر الشداء شتية لحممة دلو يا عالبلي ما 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 وشانا وشانا دلو يا عالبلي ما وشانا 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 دلو يا عالبلي ما גיבור ורב לא שירה, דלתי בלי הושיעה, האל המושיעה, ומציל ומושיעה, זועקך תושיעה, חוכך הושיעה, דלאך תשביעה, לב ולהשפיעה, כל שיח תקשב תושיעה,